Good morning, DJ INC, and welcome to Health Healing and Hampton Roads for this Wednesday. It's a beautiful Wednesday, and yes, indeed, let me just tell you that we have a fantastic interview lined up for you. Let's talk about it. It is Victims' Rights and Child Abuse as well as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And, well, joining us on the telephone is Chrissy Bellino. She is the Senior Victims Advocate with Newport News Commonwealth's Attorney's Office and Victim Services. Welcome to the show.
Giving me the opportunity to come on and talk about some things that we're doing here in our office.
Thank you so much. Let's talk about real quick victims' rights. Let's just dive straight into that. Let's talk about what exactly is victims' rights.
This month we are celebrating Victims' Rights Week. That's April 18th through the 24th of this month, and it's a time for us to educate our community and really highlight some of the victims and survivors that we've worked with. We understand it can be very difficult to go through the criminal justice process, especially when it's something that you may not have done before and you've been a victim or a survivor yourself. So our office offers support services and community resources so that victims feel like they have a voice, that they're supported while going through that process. We review with them what their rights are. The Code of Virginia does give victims certain rights, and we go over those with them again and offer them some community support, and so that they don't feel alone.
Oh, that is great information, and that is very important because we think about victims when something happens and actually being able to be there for them as a support network.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. It's really important that they have somebody to be with them, to help them understand the criminal justice process. For the most part, most people may not understand what going to court is going to look like, or going to court, what they're going to have to say, or what may be expected of them. So it gives us the opportunity to do things like take them on a courtroom tour, have somebody sitting beside them. In our local community, we know that there's a lot of transients from other areas, and so they may not have the family or friend support that they would normally have if going to court. So thankfully, they have our agencies that can help them and, like I said, offer that hand and, that support for them.
Are there any nonprofit organizations in association with supporting those victims?
There absolutely are. We are very fortunate to have a lot of nonprofit organizations also. On the peninsula, we work with Transitions Family Violence Services. We also work with the Center for Sexual Assault Survivors that both offer support services throughout the criminal justice process. On the south side, I know they have a few services with the Samaritan House and the YWCA, amongst many, many more. I really encourage people to just do a quick Google search or an online search of support services or child advocacy centers with their local community name, and you'll find a slew of information and other programs that will be there to help you and can guide you.
This is also sexual assault awareness as well. Now let's talk about that real quick. What is that line of sexual assault?
So sexual assault is defined as any unwelcome or unwanted touching of the private parts of your body. It can also be any lewd or harassing sexual comments or gestures, indecent exposures. We see all types of those things in our office.
Oh, wow. Especially since it's getting warmer, especially.
Yes, people are out more. I think as we are hopefully emerging a little bit from this pandemic, people are out and expressing themselves in various ways. But it's been very unfortunate that throughout this last year and this pandemic, we've still seen an increase in sexual assaults, to many of our community members, to include children as well.
Yes, indeed. Now, how is the numbers over in Newport News when you're talking about, sexual assault? And I'm going to add one more into this conversation, sex trafficking.
Sex trafficking is something that we have a coordinated response to here throughout the Hampton Roads community. We do have a program that we partner with many of the local agencies. Again, that includes the Peninsula and the South Side to combat sex trafficking. It is something that we know goes on, but we also know that it is very well hidden in our communities. It's unfortunate that it has become such an issue, but we do know it's going on, and we are working together with the Office of the Attorney General to support victims to make sure that these offenders are being prosecuted and being held accountable for what they're doing.
Now, you're representing the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. Do y'all guys deal majority with prosecution there?
Yes. So our office is the office that prosecutes any local state charges against an offender in the community. If there's been an offense that's occurred in the city of Newport News, it's our office that will prosecute that case.
Now, I'm going to flip it on the other side. What about if there's someone that is there that, do y'all guys get into defending as well or helping?
We each community also has a public defender's office, which acts somewhat similar to ours, but for the defendants that are accused of a crime.
Okay, thank you so much for that clarification. Moving forward, now this is also Child Abuse Prevention Month.
Yes.
And, you know, the awareness of child abuse prevention. Now, we have talked about this before on Health Healing and Hampton Roads. And one of the things that questions that I threw out to one of the people who was on the program was, when you're talking about child abuse, period, there's a fine line where there is, you know, one parent's abuse can be another parent's corrective action. Mm-hmm. Can we talk about what constitutes child abuse?
So child abuse is when there's an injury, some sort of injury caused. If someone is using a tool of some sort, a belt, a rope, something like that, something that leaves a mark that shouldn't be there. Understandably, corporal punishment is something that many families still use, but when it goes past the point of just simply trying to correct the behavior and then moves on to leaving permanent marks, bruises, scars, that's when there is a genuine concern for that child's safety.
What are the numbers like in Newport News when it comes down to child abuse?
I will say in the last year, we've seen a real increase in child abuse. I think we were really concerned when the pandemic originally hit that it would not be reported because kids weren't in school. However, child abuse is still being reported, and we have seen some alarming numbers over this last year, which, you know, has to do with people being tensions rising while everybody's in the home. There may be some loss of financial stability. There's been increase in alcohol and drug use, increase in anxiety with everybody being in the home. So in some ways it's understandable that tensions are rising, but it's a matter of educating families on what is appropriate punishment or what are some things that we can do to avoid conflict in the home.
What is it that we can do when we see that happening?
When you start to see something happening, if you see something in your community, I encourage people to talk to children and to believe children. There's some really great support services. I would encourage people to develop a relationship with their community partners, like the Boys and Girls Club or the community rec centers. Talk to school counselors about any resources. It's really important, though, that you be a trusting adult and caregiver to children so that they feel supported and they feel like they have somebody that they can trust to come and talk to. But I really encourage parents and families to reach out, like I said, to those local community services and programs, especially, like I said, the school counselors. Even though the kids aren't in school every day, the school counselors are still there to offer support.
That's a great point that you have brought up because a lot of things are now, since the pandemic, in a virtual state.
Yes, which in some ways has created some ease, where many families at times weren't able to take off from work, or weren't able to take the kids out of school, or may just not have had the vehicle to drive to some sort of counseling service or supportive program. Because everything is virtual now, there's a much easier way to access those community resources. So while things are difficult because we are somewhat isolated in the home, I do think it's really forced us to become creative on how we can still receive support services and still access those important needs in the community.
That is really great. We're listening to Health Healing in Hampton Roads. We're talking with Chrissy Bellino, the senior victim advocate with the Newport News Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, Victim Services. And tell us how we can reach you if we want to get more information.
Oh, absolutely. You can reach me directly at my office. My number is 757-926-7399. I also have some other community resources I'd kind of like to shout out to and share their information if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So another really great resource, which I mentioned earlier, is the Center for Sexual Assault Survivors here in Newport News, and their number is 757-599-9844. The National Sexual Assault Hotline is 1-800-838-8238. And another really great resource online for any sexual assault survivors, child or adult, is Darkness to Light. And they have an online website, which is d2l.org. Again, that's d2l.org. I would also encourage people to, if they do have some concerns about child abuse, to reach out to Child Protective Services, the school counselors, and talk to them about what their concerns are.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on Health Healing in Hampton Roads on this Wednesday. Any final thoughts you want to leave our audience?
Well, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about this really important topic. I really appreciate you guys listening and taking in this information, and I really hope that this helps our local community here.
Indeed, it will.